The Voice of ESG.
Hello to a new episode of the Voice of ESG, our RSM Netherlands podcast about sustainability. Today we're going to be focusing specifically on the G, on the governance aspects, since it's been getting a lot less attention and we figured it's time to put it in the spotlight. I'm Lene Timmerman from RSM Netherlands Strategy and Sustainability Consulting Team, and I'm going to be joined by two of my colleagues today, which I'm very happy about. We have here from the Netherlands, Suzanne de Boer.
Hello.
And from Germany, Dr. Verena Rauen. Suzanne, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you very much for having me here. My name is Suzanne de Boer and I work as a director at RSM Netherlands. I focus on corporate governance and culture, and I have a background in ethics and compliance. But nowadays, I work mainly with company culture and governance structures, as they are the underlying drivers of company conduct. And this is very important to address, as it's the driver of the current sustainability transition that companies are dealing with.
And Verena.
My name is Verena Rauen. I work for RSM Germany in the team Governance Risk Compliance, and I'm a senior manager for compliance and governance with a special focus on the intersection to ESG. And I'm specialized on the implementation and audit of compliance management systems and on consulting on, for example, the supply chain due diligence measures according to the new German Supply Chain Due Diligence Act.
Thank you very much for joining us. So what we are going to do in this podcast is essentially, I think we'll start with getting the concepts down. What even is governance and why is it important? Then we'll go into how is that translated into law? What does the legislation actually look like? And finally, the very interesting part of practical implications for your organization. So what does actually mean for you? We'll try to give you some practical tips and tricks, some advice on how to deal with the challenges coming your way. Important here to remember is also, this may look like it is only important for the large organizations, but even as a small company, you will be in the value chain of those companies. So it is also important to already keep in mind. Now, to get started, let's take a step back. What even is sustainability? Verena.
Sustainability stems originally from the vocabulary of forestry. It has been introduced by Hans Carl von Carlowitz in the 18th century when the forests in Europe were about to disappear. And von Carlowitz said that we should never cut down more trees than we can grow back. This principle laid the foundations for what we understand today as sustainable development. It is about preservation of resources for us, but also for the future generations. And therefore, sustainability includes more than just ecology, as we will see in this podcast. It goes far beyond environmental protection and encloses nearly all aspects of our modern lives.
Yeah, so altogether, sustainability recognizes that ecological problems are linked to economic and social issues. And the impact of companies and how they conduct their business do have a huge impact on those topics. This was also recognized by the legislators, and therefore they came up with new legislation in the field of ESG, as they saw that companies were mainly focusing on profits and on creating shareholder value. But as a result, a lot of these companies had negative impact with the way they did business, like pollution, misconduct, forced labor, corruption, and those problems often arose in areas where they did not have the profits or where they did not sell their products. This was something that was acknowledged by the European Union, and it was said that we should have new rules and regulations as to prevent this from happening. Therefore, one of those new legislations that was developed is the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. This law focuses on 3 topics, which are the environment, social, and governance.
So, as you can see from what Suzanne just explained about the impact of companies, you can already imagine why governance is that important for sustainability. because governance means how a company is steered and navigated towards its aims, especially also its future strategic goals, which have to include sustainability in our modern society. The term governance stems from the Latin word gubernare, which means to govern, but also to navigate towards a certain direction. And it is one of the important pillars of the trias of ESG. So ESG means environment, social and governance. And all these three concepts form the foundation for sustainable development. This is important to know because if you talk about sustainability, the most important point is that it is not only about environmental issues, but that you have to consider all these three pillars together in order to achieve strategic goals and also especially sustainable goals. Additionally, each pillar harbors potential risks that can have fatal consequences for the other two if one of the three pillars is neglected.
Yeah, so it's really very interconnected. Could you maybe give it an example to illustrate that a bit?
Yes, of course. If you consider the example of corruption that Suzanne has already mentioned in the beginning, corruption is one of the most severe causes for poverty in the world. And corruption can be influenced by governance structures because governance is focused on the systems within the company which serve the fulfillment of, for example, compliance goals. Compliance means to comply with rules, with external and internal standards, and also especially to prevent corruption. And since corruption is such a severe risk for societal, political, and also environmental well-being, here you can see how governance and the other two pillars of ESG, social and environment, come together. Because if corruption is in place, then you can see that a product is not really focused on quality because corruption undermines fair competition. So a product is not placed because of its quality and its fair production, but because of bribery, for example. And this is how corruption can undermine the other two pillars. Because you can circumvent, for example, environmental standards during the production and can place the product anyway. Because of corruption.
So it sounds very important to look at governance then, huh?
Exactly. And that is why the regulator in the CSRD has included quite some elements that they expect from companies to report on regarding their governance. Just one step back, the CSRD stands for Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, and it expects from companies to provide transparency on the way how they conduct business. So they are expected to report on the topics of the E, the S and the G. And the G is, as Verena said, focusing on the way that the company is run. So the decisions that are taken, the goals that are set and the behavior that is expected from the employees in the organization. And that is then the first topic which is addressed in the regulation. How is the business culture of your organization and what do you do to improve it and to set the right standards?
And how would you say that relates to the systemic aspect of governance, Verena?
So the culture and the systems, the governance systems, are closely intertwined. I already mentioned that governance is, as Suzanne said, about the right behavior in the company, but it is also about setting up the systems. And there are three important governance systems, namely the internal control system, the compliance management system, and the risk management system. And these three systems run the structure, for good behavior in a company, for sustainable behavior. And this is very important because we know that individual behavior is very important. And also the culture, which is the glue, the compass, which leads this individual behavior, is extremely important. But it is also the structure, the surroundings, in which you move, how your goals are set up, how hierarchies are structured, how the remuneration is structured, that guides individual behavior. So it is very important that the systems, the governance systems, and the company culture come together and are aligned, so that the system can actually work and support a sustainable behavior. And this is why it is so important that we see both sides of governance, so the behavioral side and cultural side, and also the systemic side.
Yeah, and to add to that, the behavior of the top management or the people in the management board and the supervisory board, amongst others, is very crucial to how this culture is defined and what behavior is accepted and is ignored. So therefore, one of the things that is also mentioned by the regulator is the knowledge level of the members of the supervisory and of the management board. They really expect at least one of the persons in this board to have the skills and knowledge on the ESG challenges that are now that the companies are dealing with. And if there's no knowledge on these topics, you cannot expect that any changes are going to take place. So the regulator wants companies to be transparent on the level of knowledge, the available skills in the management board, and the flow of information on those topics towards the management board and the supervisory board.
And speaking of the top management, how would you say, Verena, that the behavior of the top management relates to governance, to all of this?
Yeah, this is an important question because governance is closely related to the behavior of the top management. As we already said, that the company culture is very important for the governance systems in order to make them work. And the so-called tone from the top, so the behavior and also the attitude that the top management shows towards sustainable goals, but also concerning compliance goals, is very important for this tone from the top, which influences the company behavior, the company culture, and also the behavior of employees. And here it is important to distinguish between governance, which is about the setup of the systems, the structure of the governance systems, and the structure of the company and strategic goals, and leadership, because leadership is oriented towards individual behavior of the top management, and it is like a set of behaviors and individual actions which form together the collective direction, and the collective following of strategic goals. And of course, you can imagine that leadership and governance are inseparably intertwined. They belong together, and it is important to think of both in order to make governance work.
And to add to that, the regulator also indicated certain topics in which they expect the companies to be aware of their position and to show a certain level of leadership. One is in the prevention of corruption and bribery, and they want the top management to set the example and to say what is accepted and which is not accepted, and also to provide training to their staff to ensure that they have the same level of understanding. Another topic that is addressed is the management of the relationship with suppliers, as you should acknowledge that you are dependent on suppliers and they are dependent in a certain way on you. So how do you deal with them? And how do you realize that they are important stakeholders and should be treated accordingly? For example, by the way in which you have the payment policies, or in the way what you expect of their impact on the E, S and the G.
And how are regulators actually going about trying to bring companies to behave more in this way, to have an eye on responsible governance?
That is done by the focus on transparency. So what they want is companies to be transparent on their business conduct, and they hope that the users of this information, investors, stakeholders, employee, customers, are going to compare the information, and then that they might choose for which companies they want to work or they want to buy the products from, and which companies should start improving their behavior as it is not acceptable anymore against nowadays standards.
And this transparency is done by the reporting, because the CSRD is a reporting directive, and through the reporting, transparency should be achieved about the sustainability goals.
Yeah, exactly.
And what does this actually mean now for companies? I mean, we have the regulation, but also if our listeners, who are likely part of companies themselves, want to start looking at responsible governance, where should I get started?
I think the biggest difference we can see here is for the big companies that fall under the regulation of the CSRD and need to start reporting in the next year, in the upcoming years, or the smaller companies that are part of the value chain of those bigger companies. For the first group, the big companies, I would start with ensuring that the board members have the right knowledge regarding ESG and that they start thinking about the impact that their company has on environment, social.
So really building that knowledge and awareness there.
Exactly, because you need to be knowledgeable and aware before you can start making changes.
And also there are some concrete examples in how far you can implement measures, governance measures, which serve the aim of sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
And Suzanne already mentioned the knowledge of the board members, which is very important. There could be other examples as well. For example, the implementation of whistleblowing systems.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the moment there's a new regulation which has been initiated by the European Union on the protection of whistleblowers, which enforces all employers starting from 50 employees, which is rather small,
Mm-hmm.
To implement whistleblowing systems in their company. And these whistleblowing systems also serve the prevention of the aforementioned example of corruption. Because corruption can be recognized by its covertness.
Yeah.
It's paradoxically to say, but corruption is most of the time covert, so you cannot really recognize it at the first glance. And this is why it is so important to have whistleblowers who report about it, so that you can actually prove corruption and detect corruption in the first step. And this is how these measures belong together, Corruption and whistleblowing systems serve the aim of the prevention and detection of corruption. Yeah. And here the circle closes again to the governance structures.
Again, everything very interconnected. I'm noticing a theme.
Yeah, well, and another topic is also the relationship with suppliers, as suppliers are one of the main stakeholders from the company. So the management should also start thinking about what they expect from their suppliers, to try to investigate what the impact of the suppliers is on the ESG topics, and maybe to see also where they can help those suppliers in raising the bar and getting up to speed, as certain smaller companies might not have the knowledge or the time to do so. Additionally, if you're such a small company and you are in the value chain of the bigger companies, you can expect to get questions in the near future on the way how you prevent corruption and bribery from happening in your company, how you are dealing with your stakeholders, and also, if they are small but still 50 people, if they have arranged something for the whistleblowers.
Yeah, so very concrete things to take a look at. Maybe to finish us off, what would you highlight as really the one thing to look at first when considering governance?
For me, it would be for the management board to start thinking about the impact that the company has and how they want to change this for the better. I think that's the best point to start, and then to see in what ways the governance need to be adjusted to live up to those expectations.
Thank you. And Verena, anything you want to highlight in the end?
Yes, since Suzanne pointed at the dimension of leadership with the impact of the management and the management behavior, I'd also like to add that the systemic level and the systemic structure of the company is very important to make individual behavior work. And this is why, especially for bigger companies, and the compliance management systems are so important. And it is important that they are linked to a positive company culture and a positive compliance culture, which is the specific term there. So here you can see again, governance is about the system and the individual in the system, and also about the culture, which is the binding glue between the two.
Thank you very much. I would say those are very good finishing words to close this episode on. Of course, we're only scratching the surface, but we're hoping that this was a good introduction and overview of what governance even is. If you want to know more, you're very welcome to reach out to us. We will also release more episodes in this topic, including one on leadership, which Verena touched upon before. If you want to know more about that, please check out that episode as well. And thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.